You probably know someone who's been unemployed for a while. Let's call him John. John's been job hunting for months. In the meantime, government benefits help him pay rent, bills, and food. Then he finally gets a job. He's excited, gets his first paycheck, and thinks life is back on track. But here's the problem. That paycheck is just high enough to make him lose his benefits, and still too small to replace what he just lost. Now he also has new costs, like paying for transportation to get to work and childcare while he's at the office. So after all that, he realizes that he actually has less money now than when he was unemployed. That's not just frustrating, it's a real thing, and it even has a name: the welfare trap. This is just one of many poverty traps that affect about 1 billion people around the world. And in the US alone, over 35 million people are living in poverty. So the big question is the American dream a lie? Well, John doesn't see it that way. He truly believes hard work will pull him out of poverty. But right now, his paycheck barely covers rent and bills. So he starts cutting back on basic needs, like food. The problem is, eating badly doesn't just leave us hungry. It also reduces our capacity to work. When you don't eat well, you feel tired all the time, and it's harder to focus or learn new skills. So it drags down your productivity. And when that happens, you don't move up. You stay stuck in the same cycle of low-paying jobs, one after another. And you still can't afford the things that could really help you move forward to a better-paying job. Then there's healthcare. When you're poor, most of your money goes to just getting through the month. So going to the doctor feels like something you can't afford, unless it's an emergency. The thing is, by the time you have to go, a small health problem has often turned into a big one. Something that could have been fixed with a simple, cheap visit becomes expensive and serious. You miss work, you get hit with medical bills, and you fall even deeper into the hole. Now, think about education. A lot of people finish college already drowning in debt, so they take whatever job they can get, even if it doesn't need a degree, just to pay off their student loans. One report found that 1 year after finishing their degree, 52% of graduates were working in jobs below their education level. 10 years later, around 45% of those people were still stuck in the same situation. All these tough repeating cycles are connected to something known as the capacity curve. Basically, if you're already doing financially okay, an extra dollar can really help you move forward. But when you're poor, that same extra dollar mostly goes to survival: rent, food, bills, and debts. So climbing up takes way more effort, even when you're working just as hard. But where does poverty come from? There are two ways to see it. First, the macro view. Some roots go way back. Things like historical injustices that still affect people today. Then, there's the micro level. Right now, 5 things push a lot of people into poverty: long-term unemployment, debts, trouble with education, trauma, and families breaking down. And the hard part is, these things almost never come alone. They usually stack together. One problem makes the next one worse, and pretty soon you're dealing with a whole pile of barriers that are really hard to escape. That's why about 1 out of every 10 people in the US lives in poverty. And by that, I mean families that are making around $38,000 a year or less. So our guy John is stuck right in that group, but he's still hopeful. And honestly, you can see why. Just like a lot of us, he grew up watching his grandpa live the old-school American dream. John's grandpa finished school, got hired young at a steady factory job, and a couple of years later, he was making enough money that one paycheck covered the basics. Back in the mid-60s, he bought a simple 3-bedroom house for about $12,000, paid it off over time, and raised his family there. By the time he hit his late 50s, he had a pension, a house that was fully paid for, and a life where the rules felt pretty clear. Work hard and things get better. John always figured he'd follow that path too, but now that he's getting older, it feels harder and harder to reach that life. Research shows that about half of Americans still think the American dream is possible, but honestly, the numbers tell a different story. These days, improving your financial situation is much harder than it used to be. America's social mobility is now one of the lowest in the country's history. So basically, the poorer someone grows up today, the more likely they are to stay poor as an adult. If nothing changes, some experts believe that the US could stop being a place where you can shape your future with hard work and control your economic destiny. Instead, it starts looking more like a place where your life is decided the day you're born. Rich kids stay rich, poor kids stay poor. Over the last 30 years, the richest Americans have taken a much bigger slice of the country's income. The share going to the top 1% has roughly doubled. Meanwhile, the income of working-age US citizens have barely grown lately. In fact, it's the slowest growth we've seen since the 2010s. And when you look at what people can actually buy with their paychecks, I mean their real purchasing power, it's close to the weakest growth we've seen in the last 10 years. That takes us back to John. Even working extra hours, he still can't afford a house, and every day it feels like groceries just keep getting more expensive. Then he looks at his boss. The guy shows up in fresh designer suits, drives more than one car, and somehow buys a new house every few years. So John wonders, is it just because he has a higher salary? Well, not really. Because here's the thing with the American dream. These days, it starts to look like a lie, but only for poor people. While regular people deal with higher prices and tighter budgets, wealthy people are making money from what they already own. Put it simply, John's paycheck gets eaten up by basics like food, transportation, and rent, and his wages can't keep up because of inflation. But his boss was born with money and owns things like stocks, property, and other investments. When overall prices rise because of inflation, those assets often rise too. So instead of falling behind, he stays protected and keeps getting richer. And just like that, the gap between rich and poor in the US has been growing for decades. And by 2021, the top 1% held about a third of the country's wealth, while the bottom half of Americans only had a tiny slice. Around 2 or 3%. Yeah, I know. That's a lot to take in. But John can't just give up. Getting out of poverty is possible. One thing you can do is to find one specific solid skill that employers around you really need, and then learn it in the cheapest way you can. That could be through community college, a free training program, books from the library, or even tutorials on YouTube. Although that's a good idea, here's the hard part. There is no magic solution, because poverty doesn't look the same for everyone. What helps one person might not help someone else at all. That's why it's almost impossible to find one big plan that works for everybody. But hey, that doesn't mean we stop trying, right?
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.